now that you're familiar with how the page is set up, let's go ahead and let's start creating the JavaScript to make the page a little bit more dynamic. What we're going to want to do first is we're going to want to hide some of the content on this page. So the only thing that they want the user to see initially is the first two paragraphs and these photographs. All of the recipes that appear subsequently, we want those all to be hidden. So let's go ahead and go into our jQuery page and let's accomplish this. I already have my document ready function, so the next step for me is to go ahead and target the what it is that I want to hide. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in here that I want to hide the divs that contain the content, and I'll be separating these by commas as you normally do in jQuery, so that you can target more than one item with the same bit of instruction, and that will help to keep your code a little bit more consolidated and clean. Alright, so what we're saying is we want to target the cocktails div, the tea treats div, the salads div, and the beverage div, and the method that we're going to be passing on is the .hide method. So let's go ahead and let's save the page and let's check it out in the browser. When I refresh now in the browser, you can see that all of that additional content now disappears. I no longer have scroll bars on my web page, and the only content that appears is what you see right here. So what we want to do next is we want to ensure that when the user clicks one of these links up here, the appropriate content is going to be displayed. So when you click cocktails, for instance, we want this content to disappear, and we want this section of the page to be replaced with the appropriate content. So that's the next thing that we're going to do on our page here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to begin by making a new jQuery statement, and we are going to have this be triggered by one of the buttons. And if we look really quickly actually in the code, you can see that here's my navigation. All of my links are currently linking to null objects. The hash mark just makes a null link, so they're not actually linking to anything. We're going to have the link instructions be created in the jQuery, and each of the buttons has its own unique ID assigned to it. So by having its own unique ID, this will allow us to go ahead and target which button that we want to be triggering a specific set of instructions. So back here in jQuery, we'll go ahead and we'll target the div called button cocktails to start off with, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass on the event handler of .click, and .click is going to call a function, and I always like to terminate my functions right when I make them so I don't forget to do that a little bit later on. And then what is it that we want to have happen when this button is actually clicked? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want the main content div to disappear. So let's write that first, and we'll use the slide up method like so. And then the next thing that we want to have happen is we're going to want the cocktail div to appear. So we'll go ahead and target that, and let's use the slide up method on that. And I just realized on my methods, this should be the slide up method and this should be the slide down. Actually, let's change this one to down. Okay, so what's gonna happen here is when you click the button cocktails, the main content is going to slide up, and then the cocktail div is going to slide down. So that looks right. Let's go ahead and save this, and let's check it out in the page. When we refresh the page and click the cocktail button, the content that was there disappears, and then this content is going to appear. So it's going to go ahead and appear. Now if I click the button again, nothing happens, and that's because this is just a straight set of instructions that we went ahead and used here. So the next step is for us to make this a little bit more dynamic. We're going to go ahead and we're going to change the cocktail showing. Instead of using slide down, we're going to use a toggle method. The toggle method is a way that you can have something kind of work back and forth. And the toggles have different parameters that you can pass on to them. I'll go ahead and I'll use let's actually use the fast parameter to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and pass on a fast. And if we go ahead and save the page, and now let me show you what happens in the browser. When we refresh here and click our cocktail link, you can see that now the ingredients for our cocktail, the passion fruit mojito, goes ahead and slides into place. Now if I click this button again, it disappears, and you can see that that happens rather quickly. So every time I click it, it either appears or disappears. It's a toggle. So this is much easier than what we did in a previous exercise. When you want something to have a behavior that like turns on and off, you can use the toggle method to accomplish that. So now this is kind of doing what we want to have happen. However, when we click on any of our other buttons, they don't do anything. So let's go ahead and let's start to script those as well. We'll come back into our code, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy this block of code right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to target the next button, and the next one is our Tasty Treats button. So that one's called BTN Treats, and again we want it to be triggered by the click function, and I want main content to slide up, and I want the T treats div to slide down. So, and let's actually change this to slow. I think the fast is a little bit fast, so we'll change this to slow in both cases. I'm going to save my page, and we'll go back into the browser and let's refresh. So here's our default content. When I click one of these buttons, the new content should appear. So here's the Tasty Treat content, and if I click this, of course it's going to disappear, so the toggle function is working. And now if I come back to cocktails, let's see what happens. So cocktails does appear. You can see that it actually pushed down the content for the next div, but this isn't working entirely like we want it to work, because we basically want this content, the cocktail content, to disappear when you click Tasty Treats, or when we click cocktails, we want cocktails to show or hide, but we don't want the fruit, the Tasty Treats recipe to show, because that could be confusing. So we need to go ahead and rethink what we wrote right here and change this a little bit so it works. So ultimately what we really want to have happen is when you click the cocktail button, we want the main content to disappear as it does, but we also want to ensure that any of the other content that may or may not be showing also is going to disappear. So we'll just include all of the names of the divs except for the one that we want to actually show in this little string of instructions right here. So, and let me make sure that I put my periods there, because these are all classes. So I'm going to say I want main content, I want the treats, I want the salads, and I want the beverage divs to all slide up. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll just copy these, and down here in this one we're going to say that we want the cocktails and the salads and the beverages to all disappear when you click the Tasty Treats. So let's go ahead and let's save, and let's see if now that helps our issue that we're having. So when I refresh the page, if I click the cocktail link, cocktails does show. If I click Tasty Treats, now cocktails disappears and Tasty Treats shows, and if I go back to cocktails, same thing. So now this is working the way we want it to work, much better, to actually have the behavior be like this. So let's go ahead and let's script out the last two buttons, salads and beverages, and I'm just going to copy the code that we've already established because it's pretty much the same. I only need to change a couple things. I need to change the name of the button, and I need to ensure that the appropriate content is going to be shown or hidden. So we'll replace salads with treats, and then down here I need to tell it to go ahead and display the salads div like so. And then we're going to do that one more time, and this time we're going to be targeting the beverage button, and the beverage button is going to need to, of course, show the Tasty Treats and I usually just put these in the order that they appear on the page just because it makes it easier to go in there later on and troubleshoot anything. And we'll change this down here to .beverage. Okay, so that looks right as far as the code goes. We'll check it out in the browser just to ensure that everything is functioning the way we want it to. When we click beverages, beverages appear, salads appear, and the rest of them should be working. When you do stuff like this, you're going to want to go ahead and test it, multiple ways to make sure everything is working the way you want. You can see when I clicked beverage right here, it went ahead and it did display the beverage, but for some reason the tasty treat recipe did not disappear right away. So we'll have to look into that. And I think that's the only one that's having an issue. It looks like it. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see how we can troubleshoot something that might be not functioning the way we want. And I already see what the problem is. In here, I just failed to put the period in front of tasty treats. So that should be the issue. We'll save our file and just test it one more time. But you can see how important it is to test your file multiple times and make sure that it's working the way you want it to work. So now you can see that these two buttons are displaying the appropriate content in the way that we want it to actually display. So in this lesson, we learned all about using the toggle function and how we could set up an entire web page in just one page of content. And the advantage of doing something like this, of course, is load time. Initially, all of the content is being loaded right when you get to the page, even though you don't see all of the content right when you get to the page. So that content is there, it's just waiting for the user to click the appropriate button and display the content that we want. And it also makes kind of a nice little transition between the various areas. We have a little bit of an animation that is occurring here. And you can see that depending on the order in which you click the buttons, the content will either slide down, or in some cases it actually slides up. Even though we're using the same slide down function on all of them, it just depends in the order that the divs are created in your HTML. So just be aware that that is something that you will see if you're using this type of script. And just to reiterate what the slide toggle does, the slide toggle method, the one that we're using right here, it animates the height of any elements that you're passing on or any matched elements. This is going to cause whatever is underneath to either slide up or down, appearing to reveal items that are hidden or concealed. And this can be really useful for creating the type of animation that we did in this exercise, because it goes ahead and creates something that kind of has an on and off type of behavior, which is a great way to be able to display something like what we're looking at here.